going on, guys? My name is Austin. This is the Bodies in Business podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about David Rubenstein for the Positive Influencers series. And for most people, I would say that are listening to this, you probably don't know who David Rubenstein is. He's a very successful investor, and he's written a book called How to Invest, which I think everyone should go and listen to, because essentially how to invest is a human nature thing that people should learn how to do better each and every day. And so that's how I take it, is he looks at human nature in a very fascinating way. And he's done many interviews with very high profile people, very successful people, and he's constantly trying to learn more. All right. And so one of the things that I heard him ask, like before his podcast, is what is it that makes somebody tick? And to be honest, I feel like I have this same type of interest when it comes to trying to figure out how people are successful, why people are the way they are. And I just find him to be very down to earth when he's a billionaire. He's worth $4.2 billion. And not many billionaires seem like they're pretty down to earth. He's pretty monotone, but it seems like he's a very down to earth person. He could be anybody's grandfather. You could sit down with him and he could tell you some good life advice, but also tell you a lot about investing and really help you out in your life. So I'm going to go down the line real quick. Well, so if you don't want to listen to me anymore, I would recommend typing in David Rubenstein in YouTube and going to listen to his interview that he did at the Wharton School. It gives a really good, he does an interview with this girl and she asks him some really good questions, and he tells a lot about his life and the things he's done. I just really enjoyed listening to that interview. I've listened to many of his interviews, but that's one of my favorites. And I have a list of things that really make me like David Rubenstein more, and here they are. I'm just going to go through them real quick. In David's life, he has a series of failures leading to success. And so a lot of his failures he talks about, and he's very open to these failures, and he talks how these failures actually lead him to a successful life. He's had miscalculated bets leading to better opportunities. He's very dry in his humor, and he asks questions that allow people to open up and be honest. He doesn't talk like he knows everything when he's wildly successful. He's a life learner. He's genuinely curious. He's not afraid to say he was wrong or he lost at something. He's a brass tacks kind of guy. He weighs his options and tries to make good decisions. He wrote a book, like I said, called How to Invest, and I think everyone should read it because it's honestly a good playbook on how to make better decisions in your life. And if you really want to get into the investing world, basically the book is his interviews with very high profile investors over, that have been wildly successful. And so it's really, really nice to listen to. All right. I want to give you a little background on David Rubenstein. He grew up in Baltimore. He was the son of a postal worker and built his life through education, curiosity, and public service. What really stands out is how he's chosen to use success. He's donated hundreds of millions of dollars to preserve national landmarks, institutions that belong to all of us. He co-founded the Carlyle Group, but he never financial success became his identity. He's been the chairman of the board at Duke University, chairman of the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts. He's been the president of the Economic Club of Washington, D.C. He's been the co-chairman of Brookings Institution. He's been the I'm really fumbling over my words here. Sorry. He's the vice chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations. He's on the board of regents in the Smithsonian, and he's the owner of the Magna Carta, U.S. Constitution, and Declaration of Independence, but not really. He doesn't necessarily own those things, but he's famously bought copies of them, and he lends them out to other institutions because he wants to preserve that. He's deeply committed to preserving American history and civic institutions. He has donated hundreds of millions of dollars to restore landmarks like the National Mall, the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, the Jefferson Memorial, museums, libraries, and cultural institutions. He once said, "Wealth is temporary, institutions endure." That mindset says everything about him. I think it's awesome that we have people like David Rubenstein that are in high power positions because he truly cares about the people of the country and the institutions that we have as a country. So it's really fun to have him trying his best to make America as best as possible. Much of life simply revolves around predicting. Okay, so now I want to get into his book a little bit and say things that I enjoyed about his book and kind of break down a few things that really resonate with me with him. Okay, so this is from an excerpt from his book. He said, much of life simply revolves around predicting the future and then taking actions that reflect the view of the future. Like everyone, I've made some good and bad predictions about the future and take some smart and not so smart actions based on those predictions. Predictions. So some things that he's done in his life that were good and bad predictions. He chose Jimmy Carter versus Gerald Ford in the 1976 presidential election, and he worked for Jimmy Carter's staff, and he was able to make it into the White House, and I think he was like 27 years old. But then he said he thought that Jimmy Carter was going to easily beat Ronald Reagan in the 1980 election because Ronald Reagan was super old and didn't stand a chance against Jimmy Carter. But he was wrong about that, and he's open about it. He said his Little League baseball all-star prowess was not enough for him to try to be in the professionals baseball league, but he chose academics instead, which was a good bet on his part. He thought the Baltimore Colts were going to beat the New York Jets in Super Bowl III, so he put a large wager on the game, and he ended up losing. And he said that was his last bet he'll ever make in sports. He thought that private equity was going to grow over the next 10 to 20 years, so he started the Carlyle Group. He was a co-founder of the Carlyle Group in 1987. He also thought Mark Zuckerberg's company would not grow out of the college campus at Harvard. So that was a bad bet on his part. He also thought Jeff Bezos' internet company could not possibly overcome Barnes & Noble and told Jeff Bezos that and then sold his Amazon stock. So one thing that kind of basically goes to the fact that I like that David Rubenstein tells stories like this because it allows people to understand that everyone's human and you can make bets, like you can make predictions or bets in life and you don't always have to be right. The examples that he says really makes it sound like, okay, just because he's a billionaire doesn't mean he's made every decision right in his life. So it's fun to understand that you can make a lot of mistakes or bad decisions in life and still find yourself in the investment world as a person that's a billionaire, which is incredible. Now, what I'll say is, now I know money's not everything, but I tend to, one thing he says about money and predicting and understanding that, he goes into it on his book. He says, whether someone has predicted well or poorly about life events can be gauged differently by different people. In truth, there is no single universal accepted standard to gauge how successful someone has been at predicting and acting on the future. In that respect, the investing world is totally different. The skill at predicting the future and taking preparatory action is quite measurable. In the investment world, achieving a profit to a lesser or greater degree, depending on the type of investment, is the essence of investing. In working to achieve a profit, an investor is really making a prediction about the future, the desirability of owning a particular asset, stock, bond, house, currency, etc. in the future based on the likelihood of future performance of the asset. That excerpt from the book really made me think that if you really want to see if someone is successful in an area of their life in the investing world, you can look at the bets that they've made over a long period of time. Obviously, people can be good in a short period of time, but having the ability to be successful in predicting and betting on things. And when I say betting, I mean just choosing to invest in a certain asset and then that asset appreciating means that you did your due diligence and you predicted correctly based on what you wanted to do because you wanted your asset to increase in value. And so it's really fun to think like, okay, in what area can I truly be looked at as, did this person do better or worse than last year for himself or against other people? And money is that predictor. And so it doesn't always have to be, because it also made me think money is not the ultimate predictor on success. You know, having a great family, having your health, having a good job. Those things can also be predictors of success. But I think David Rubenstein looks at ways that he can be successful in his craft, and also finds it interesting wants to interview people to understand how they were so successful in their craft. And then some traits of great investors. And I'm going to probably leave or finish out with this, because I think this is something that just in life, it's super helpful because, and we'll talk about each one. Your background, blue collar or middle class backgrounds. So he talks about how all of the people he's interviewed that have been super successful came from blue collar or middle class backgrounds. And why they came from blue collar middle class backgrounds is because they had to work really, really hard to get where they are. And he tends to think that it takes a lot of resilience and effort to really, really be successful in your area or in your craft. And if your life is too easy in the beginning, then you won't have the ability to work through the pain and the time that it takes to be unbelievably successful. Now, we're talking about investing, right? So early jobs. People came to investing after trying other professions. So he says that people tried out different jobs and really focused on what they knew best in those jobs and became proficient in those jobs before coming to investing. So it's like, working the muscle of not just investing all the time. He said, you should try different jobs out before you get into investing. Failure, many career setbacks. So David Rubenstein, will tell you, like, he made poor bets on who's the president. He said in one of the interviews at Wharton, they said, did you run into any problems when you first started out at the Carlyle Group? And he said every hour. And so I think it's important to understand that the more failures you have, the more signal that you have to not do that thing anymore the way you did it, right? So a lot of times people will fail at something or do something and it doesn't go the way they thought, and then they'll completely say, I'm never doing that again. Whereas life is an experiment, and it sounds like David Rubenstein believes that you have to figure out and you have to fail a lot in order to understand how the world works, because nobody just knows how the world works perfectly. He says, and great investors have high intelligence. They do well in school. They learn. They are lifelong learners. We'll probably get to that. They take ultimate responsibility. This was a big one for me because I think a lot of times people want to take responsibility when things go really well, but they don't take a lot of responsibility when things go poorly if you're not a great leader. They also want to have great investors want to have the final judgment on a decision of large importance. They take responsibility of the outcome, when they make the decision, and they want to do that. They have high degrees of focus. Okay. They concentrate unusually high levels of focus. They read a lot. And so that's something that is tough when you're kind of just going through a lot in life. Like, you're just trying to keep your head above water. It's tough to a lot of times just continuously learn. But if you can find ways to do that, whether it's like audiobooks or TED Talks or just watching YouTube videos that are helpful, that's super helpful. And so I really resonate with this reading thing, because growing up, I didn't read at all. And I'm like, man, I wish I would have read some books growing up, because I think I would have been a little smarter and I would have maybe done a little better in school, but can't go back in time. Only can start now. Battle of wits. He says that people that really enjoy having fun with betting, predictions, and all this other stuff in work and what they do usually do better in investing. Conventional wisdom. They go against the conventional wisdom because he says that really, really good investors can see something that other people don't. And so the conventional wisdom usually is like going with the crowd, whereas great investors usually go against the crowd or go somewhere opposite of the crowd, and they know something that the average person does not know. Attention to detail, recognition of a mistake. And I think that's huge, and that's what I really love about David Rubenstein, is that he's okay with saying, like, I messed up, and putting it out there, because we want that to be something, to be okay with failure and to be okay that you don't do everything perfectly. He's a hard worker. Like he said, his dad was a postal worker, only made like $10,000 to $15,000 a year growing up, and they lived, very modestly. And then one thing that I'm just now learning more of is that David Rubenstein gives a lot of money away to U.S. building or U.S. entities to preserve the things the U.S. has gone through, which I think is pretty cool. He's not just hoarding all his money or going to spend it all on things that he wants to do. He wants to preserve institutions and not just, be better or make things better for himself. So that's it, guys. I think he took what I'll say is, and I probably should have said at the beginning, he took $5 million in the beginning of his career, and now they hold, what is it? I think they hold like something like $426 billion in assets. So they went from $5 million in 1987 to now, as of 2023, and it's 2026 right now, but as of 2023, has $426 billion in assets under management at Carlyle Group. Go learn from this guy. Go listen to some of his podcasts. Go listen to some of his interviews. Take what he's done and try to emulate it. That's what I'm trying to do. So hopefully that was helpful. David Rubenstein, thank you for what you do. And hopefully I'll get to interview one day, sit down and learn more about what you do. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening, and get after it.